39 past the hour. Live look at the White House. The White House is claiming immunity over two former aides subpoenaed by the House Judiciary Committee, now blocking them from testifying about what they told former special counsel Robert Mueller. The letter from White House counsel Pat Cipollone to Chairman Jerry Nadler directs former senior advisors Rob Porter and Rick Dearborn not to appear before Congress, saying the two are absolutely immune from testifying. Both are key witnesses in several instances of potential obstruction of justice laid out by Mueller. A second letter places limitations on what former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski can and cannot say. Cipollone said Lewandowski is not allowed to answer any questions about his communications with the president beyond what was in the Mueller report. Nadler responded to the letter saying, quote, "This is a shocking and dangerous assertion of executive privilege and absolute immunity. The president would have us believe that he can willfully engage in criminal activity and prevent witnesses from testifying before Congress, even if they did not actually work for him or his administration." Makes a point there. Meanwhile, House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff on Friday issued a subpoena to the acting director of national intelligence, Joseph Maguire, to force the production of a whistleblower complaint that has not been submitted to congressional intelligence panels as required. Maguire's office declined Schiff's request, stating the DNI is withholding the complaint from the committee because, in part, it involves confidential and potentially privileged communications by persons outside the intelligence community. A lot to unpack here, and Congressman Schiff joins us now. Congressman Sam Stein has the first question for you.
Hey, Congressman,
Sam?
a couple questions here on this whistleblower front. First off, have you heard from the whistleblower? Do you want to hear from the whistleblower? What protections could you provide to the whistleblower? And then you also said that the DNI is refusing to turn over this stuff, citing a request from a higher authority. The insinuation left, at least for me and others, was that the president himself had intervened. Is that the insinuation you sought to provide? And if so, what basis do you have for making that insinuation?
We have not spoken directly with the whistleblower. We would like to, but I'm sure the whistleblower has concerns that he has not been advised, as the law requires, by the Inspector General or the Director of National Intelligence, just as to how he is to communicate with Congress. And so the risk for the whistleblower is retaliation. Will the whistleblower be protected under the statute if the offices that are supposed to come to his assistance and provide the mechanism are unwilling to do so? But yes, we would love to talk directly with the whistleblower. In terms of our information about the source of the resistance to providing this information to Congress, I think you can easily read between the lines of what the Office of National Intelligence has had to say when they say that this involves someone outside of their jurisdiction in terms of the intelligence community, but it involves an intelligence activity. It relates to an intelligence activity, and that this is someone who is asserting a potential privilege. Well, that's a pretty narrow category of people involving basically the president and people around him. So I think it's pretty clear what the problem is here. And as I think, the two stories you just related demonstrate, it's part of a pattern of the White House basically taking the view we can engage in corrupt conduct, and we have a privilege to conceal that from Congress and the American people.
Just a quick follow-up.
That's the problem here.
Sure. Well, a quick follow-up here, because this is so vague and developing. Do we know what the nature of the issue at hand is, what the whistleblower was coming forward about? What can you tell us about the actual substance of the matter here? Or are you in the dark as well?
Well, we don't have the complaint, so there's a limit to what I can say about the substance of it. But we do know from the Inspector General that the subject matter relates to an intelligence activity, that it is not just a concern, but an urgent concern, that it deals with serious or flagrant abuse. And that's really all that is necessary to provide that complaint to Congress. And indeed, the practice since the establishment of this office, the Inspector General and the Office of Director of National Intelligence, is even when it doesn't meet those criteria, even when the Inspector General does investigation and doesn't believe the complaint is credible, they still provide it to Congress. That's been the unbroken practice since the beginning of that office until now. And here, we have a confirmation that it's credible. And that suggests that during that 14-day investigation that the IG did, they uncovered other witnesses or other evidence that helped to affirm what this whistleblower is saying.
So, Mr. Chairman, you are, of course, the chair of the Intel Committee. We've received at NBC News 3 sources telling us that intelligence officials believe that these attacks on the Saudi oil fields did originate from Iran. Originate is sort of a murky language. We don't know exactly if that means they were launched from Iran or directed from Iran. What is your understanding of the source of those attacks on Saudi Arabia?
Well, I'll get more in classified form later today, but I think it is certainly fair to attribute at least the technological know-how to the Iranians. So whether this was launched from Iranian soil or it was launched by the Iranians as opposed to their proxies, I have yet to make any determination myself, so I don't want to profess to say more than I can. But certainly this wouldn't be possible without Iranian involvement at some level. Now, I think that as a practical matter, the administration needs to be working with our allies to figure out how to contain this increasing Iranian malevolent action in the region, whatever their role was in this attack. It follows on, of course, the attack on shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and other provocative acts that Iran are using to try to get out from under sanctions. We should not be going at this alone. This is an attack on infrastructure affecting the whole world, both in terms of shipping and oil production. But also part of the aim here by the Iranians is to separate us from our allies. And that means more than we should simply outsource our military to the Saudis, as the president seems apparently willing to do. It means that we need to work in concert so these actions are counterproductive for Iran, not helping Iran's cause.
So the Saudis believe this is an act of war. If we find out it was directed from Iran, what should be the American response? Should the American military be involved?
I think that, first of all, whatever we do should be in concert with our allies. And here I'm talking much more broadly than the Saudis. The same was true for the attack on shipping. It wasn't an attack on American ships. It was an attack on world shipping. And this is an attack on oil infrastructure that serves the world. So we have to do this in consultation with our allies. Before we contemplate any military action ourselves, the president should come to Congress and make the case, particularly if there's a risk that any retaliatory step leads us into warfare. And the risk here is, I think, not that the president wants a war with Iran. I don't think he does. And I don't think Iran wants a war with us. They want out from under sanctions. The risk is that we bumble our way into war. And so I think any military step of any substance ought to be debated in Congress. The president should come to Congress if he wants to go down this path. But again, fundamentally, we cannot allow the Iranians to pry us away from our allies. And already our allies have great skepticism about our actions. They didn't support our leaving the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, and they were concerned it would lead us to exactly where we are now, of heightened confrontation and possible war.
Do we have a responsibility to defend Saudi Arabia as an ally if they go to war with Iran?
Look, the Saudis are doing what's in their national interest. We need to do what's in ours, which means more than getting reimbursed for our military costs, which is what the president seems to be preoccupied. They are an ally, but frankly, after the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, after the unending war in Yemen and the civilian casualties, we need to reassess the nature of that relationship, and I think be far more skeptical of Saudi intentions and not place such reliance on the Saudis for Middle East peace, to put an end on their own to the war in Yemen in terms of standing up to Iran. It needs to be about more than what's in the Saudis' interest.
I want to ask you, before we let you go, about another question. There's some internal debate in the Democratic Party about Justice Kavanaugh. You had presidential candidates, including Senator Harris and former Congressman Beto O'Rourke, saying he ought to be impeached or removed by any means necessary. You have people like Senator Dick Durbin inside the Senate saying we can't be the party of impeachment and that's all we do. Chairman Nadler, your colleague at the Judiciary Committee, saying we're trying to impeach the president, or at least we're working on the impeachment of the president. We don't have time for this. Do you believe Justice Kavanaugh should be removed from the bench?
Well, I never felt he should be confirmed, but
he has been. So what about now?
Well, now I guess I feel the way Dick Durbin does, which is we have to be about more than just impeachment. But look, I think there should be a full investigation of why the FBI's hands were tied, why they did no credible investigation, and you could see that at the time. They were given an artificial deadline. You basically have a few days to do an investigation of incidents that took place decades earlier. There was no way to do that credibly. And what's more, they didn't even try. So somebody cabined what they could do. And if that was the White House, we should find out. If that was Mitch McConnell, we should find out. Because this situation may happen again. And so it'll shed light on the character or lack of character of Justice Kavanaugh. That's important. But it will also, I think, help in terms of any future confirmation in making sure that we do fully vet nominees to the court.
But you don't believe he should be impeached?
I don't see the point of beginning an impeachment proceeding that we know would be doomed to failure in the Senate vis-a-vis Justice Kavanaugh. With the president, there are other considerations. This continual resistance to any form of oversight is in itself an impeachable offense, the obstruction of Congress. So he's in a different category, I think, than Kavanaugh.
And that obstruction continues this morning, as we were discussing.
Sure does.
Congressman Adam Schiff, chairman of the Intel Committee, thanks so much as always.
Thank you.
Mika?
Up next, the president, under investigation on several fronts, once again deflects, suggesting an investigation into Barack and Michelle Obama. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.